The question about big buck travel comes up all the time. And I think the default way that people look at where big bucks travel versus where the rest of the deer herd travels is all the deer come out on this trail, the big bucks just last. But there's kind of distinct key differences that you need to know about to consistently find where big bucks are going to travel.
This is a spot that you can see a lot of deer, and there's gonna be a lot of does and young bucks that come working their way out of this thick stuff right down this creek bottom, kind of working their way on the edge of this grass, kind of playing around, nipping, feeding, working their way out to this crop field, to this other green field. And they're very visible, and that's a very consistent thing to happen. In years and years and years out here, probably count on one hand how many times I've seen a mature buck do that. What they are doing though is working right in this stuff. So they're working their way out in the same general direction. They've got the same end goal.
Yep.
But instead of being out in that open grass, they're in this thick, nasty, shrubby stuff. They'll work out of the timber, get in this stuff, get to a point where, you know, they feel very safe still. They're right on the edge of the really thick, and then they wait. And they'll stand here and stage for a long time. All the rest of the deer get way ahead of them. Oftentimes they are the last to emerge, but they're not going to the same places. This buck is operating very different than the other 10 deer that came before him.
Yep.
And this is a place that I've seen a lot of mature bucks just like hang up, like a hung up turkey, just hanging out, watching, scanning. And if all you ever did was hunt on the edges or hunt up where the other deer are, you would never get a bow shot at this deer at least. But if you start seeing like the spots where the mature deer prefer to be, in cover, on the edges, where they're safe, at least from their perspective, then all of a sudden you have those opportunities.
Yeah. When you start learning this about mature bucks and how they're going to use this type of cover, this soft edge here, to their advantage, you start to realize the way that they're thinking is just different. You know, they're not raising fawns. They're not worried about anything else but their own safety. So they put themselves in a position where it's advantageous to be there. And especially like new hunters haven't hardly witnessed it at all. So we start thinking they're just nocturnal, or they never go through here or there or wherever, but they're confident moving into places they feel comfortable. And so the more you witness that and see this movement where you watch all the little ones go this way and he hangs back here for the all clear signal or for it to get dark, that is, you can replicate that throughout the whitetails range, because they're going to do that everywhere. But it comes at the cost of us fighting our instincts to be out on the edges, to be in the open, to hunt that beautiful deciduous forest that you can look through that you might want to turkey hunt, because that's not where they're going to be. They're going to go where they're hard to get to.
And that's how they get old. So this is another good example of a spot that, you know, you might see deer, does, young bucks, 2-year-olds even, they might hop over this hill. They might cross down here. But 9 times out of 10, if there's like an old buck around here that wants to go from this swamp, that's this stuff, you can see that timber over there, over to the next chunk of timber on that side, 9 times out of 10, he's crossing here. Because you've got this high little rise in the field here, higher rise in the hill there, and this one low spot, this lowest point anywhere on this field. And it's also like the narrowest point
spot
between that swamp and over here. So they can zip through here and they get like 2 things going for them. They're out of sight, and it's the closest point where they can get from thick cover to thick cover, so they don't need to be exposed for very long.
Right.
And there also might be a little bit of like an air dropping effect where they can, you know, very easily smell what's happening around here too.
Yep.
So they're accomplishing a number of important things for mature buck.
We think in our heads of ground generally being flat in a lot of places, but there's always folds in the terrain. And you learn this lesson, this little tiny subtle dip in this cornfield. You learn this lesson when you hunt out west a lot. Like I've been hunting a lot of western Minnesota prairie pothole type stuff. And when you can observe them, you see them just use even 6 feet of relief or 10 feet of relief to stay out of sight, because they're so visible in those places. And I think, you know, everybody dreams about maybe like a Kansas hunt where you're gonna see bucks running across the prairie and they're just, you know, wide open, don't care. But generally big bucks are like I don't want you to look at me.
Yeah.
And the way to keep you from looking at me is instead of running on the top there where people can see from the road, they're like, I'm gonna use this spot. And they travel through those things all the time.
Yeah.
You figure this out by being here.
Yeah.
You know, you could run a trail camera there, maybe connect the dots a little bit, but if you're looking for how big bucks travel through the open, direct observation is your move.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna go now, probably not the case.
Less so.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to see right now, but once it becomes summer or early fall and all this brush grows up, and you've got leaves on stuff, this is thick all along here. Anytime I see a mature buck moving through here, it's almost never out in the middle of that stuff. It's almost always cutting this corner in some way, going from that bedding area along the edge of this thick stuff. Like in the rut, they're doing it to check. You know, they're usually with a west wind, downwind of all this stuff, smelling it. But even like if they're transitioning to go out to feed, I never see deer come away from over there, crossing that open timber and coming out. They always stay close to that thick stuff, follow that edge, stay, you know, near safety, stay just inside safety. And I think that translates almost anywhere you're hunting, the specifics of what your thick cover looks like versus what your less thick cover looks like that'll be different. But the general rule applies, the pattern applies.
Yep.
And this is a very visual example of that, you know, when you're walking through the woods, even without seeing scrapes, rubs, anything else, you could see this and be like, huh, this might be something. And then you're looking for the rest.
You can just almost bet that big bucks are gonna cut corners. Like they're gonna stay in the cover. And like you said, when you're here and you're looking, and like even right now, I can't see through to that power line over there. So he's gonna do this when the wind's in his favor most of the time. And it's like their noses are so good, it's like he can see whether you're there or not. And you have to think about it that way, and that's why he's here. You know, we talk about how they cross the opens, how they'll stage and, you know, brushy stuff on the edge. But if you want to figure out how to kill mature bucks where there's a lot of pressure, this is the ticket. Like, how do they move through the cover? Because that's where you're going to catch them moving in daylight, if you catch them at all.
Yep.
And they're going to be doing something here again where they have some advantages. So this is cool, and there's a lesson there. Like, so many people will put their cameras on the field edge, or they'll sit in the corner, and they're like, oh, the bucks in the summer, they come out here. But oftentimes you back off 30 yards, 50 yards, 100 yards, and you're to the place where they're actually killable during the hunting season outside of the rut.
Yeah.
And in the rut.
And in the rut for sure. And the key thing to remember is that there are a lot of other deer doing things a little bit different.
Yep.
So you got to be careful not to be tempted to follow the masses.
Right.
If you're trying to kill mature buck, because they're a different animal almost.
Yeah.
The only way they got old is by doing this kind of stuff.